Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donoghue here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. This week, some 400 Kerry Co-op suppliers received letters from the Revenue asking them to pay thousands of euro in back tax on patronage shares they received years ago. We have full details and analysis of the situation and its implications for other co-ops in this week's Irish Farmers Journal and at farmersjournal.ie. But first, let's hear from those directly affected. On Tuesday, Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Pat O'Toole was in Ballybunion in County Kerry for the local IFA branch AGM. There he talked to farmers who were in total shock at the tax demands they are facing, starting with the branch chairman, Ger Buckley.
It's complete shock initially, with what has been going on, these letters in the post out of the blue, it just doesn't seem fair, on farmers after such a bad year as it is, and no one was prepared for this, not even our accountants even knew about it, they couldn't see it coming, so tis ridiculous really,
And
yeah.
these shares were bought by farmers at 125, but my understanding is that, and what the meeting was discussing here tonight, is that the co-op was actively encouraging the guys who are actively milking the cows to get more involved in the co-op, to have more ownership of the co-op, to keep it vibrant and alive and linked back to milk production, and that was the whole purpose of this scheme.
Yeah, a lot of the shares, will say, the old shares even that our parents before us had, they were handed out to our siblings, and this was given the men that were working on the ground, milking the cows, giving them an opportunity to have extra shares, and you'd have a vote as well, to have a say as well and everything. So they were really appreciated, but they're still only the paper at home in the drawer, we didn't actually make income out of them yet, unless you sell them, is when you should be taxing them, which is normal,
But by what you're saying then, the concept is that you keep the shares while you're milking,
yeah.
And then when the time to dispose of them is when you're finished milking, and then that's almost like a pension fund, a rainy day fund.
Yes, of course, yeah.
But while you want to be active in your co-op, you want to hold on to those shares, so they're worth 125 to you as long as you're milking your cows.
Exactly, yeah. Look, 'tis that story what you said there. The rainy day fund is very important. I have a young family there, and we'll say we're constantly pumping money back into the farm. We still have to put up new sheds or buy new tractors, whatever. They're not going to last forever. This investment is needed, and we need something. We're not making enough out of the milk, and we need something to put our kids through college. I have 3 young children, and they'll want to be I want them to be educated properly and everything, and get the opportunity that everyone else has.
I'm joined here by Tom Mulville, a branch member here in Ballybunion. Tom, just give me your reaction to the letters that have been arriving out to Kerry shareholders in the last few days.
I think it's very bad of the tax code that they didn't give some warning through papers. I think it's blackguarding of them on a year that farming is on the knees, the farmers are on the knees, and incomes are down. And at the moment, we're just getting loans. I did it personally, but last week, I had to go Pompey there to pay my tax bill, and I think it is very bad in them anyway, the way they're treating it at the moment anyway. Because
and those preference shares that people like you would have got, typically, are those sold or are they kept, or what do farmers tend to do with their shares?
I think they just leave them there, and they were needed. Mainly they were used for educating the kids, the children of a lot of people that had to go to college and they needed money. That's what they were cashed in. That was the main thing. I think a lot of farmers that were used for,
In the meantime, they're worth 125, and yet Revenue are looking for up to 95 euros for these shares, or the tax liability on 95 euros per share on these shares, which you paid 125 for and are worth 125 until the day you cash them in.
Until the day you cash them in, we're happy enough to pay our taxes on the day they're cashing. But at the moment they're on side and draws, and when they get diluted or whatever, into the PLC shares, we'll be paying out tax, and that's all about it, like, you know.
Yeah, I'm joined here by Brendan Lawler. Brendan is the Farm Business Chair in Kerry IFA. Brendan, a huge reaction here tonight at the AGM in Ballybunion branch to the news in Kerry that the revenue are looking for back tax on preference shares that farmers received as far back as 2011.
Yes, Pat, it's total bewilderment that this has been sprung out of the blue on farmers just after paying their tax bills on a year of very bad prices and poor weather conditions, and totally unjust. Any other sector of society wouldn't stand for it. They were given at a nominal value of 125. There was no way that you could earn an income from them unless you sold them, and when you did sell them, you pay capital gains on the benefits of it. And I can't see how they can be taxed twice. And this scenario, I think, will have to be confined to the dustbin.
The majority of farmers who would receive the preference shares, active milk producers, there's a huge drive within Kerry Co-op to ensure that active producers retain a significant interest in the co-op so that the co-op ethos is maintained and that you continue in the business of milk production, which is what the co-op was formed for in the first place. Does this threaten all that?
I think it does. It threatens the co-op ethos to its very core. The purpose of those patronage shares was where the guy milking the cows maybe wasn't lucky enough to inherit the shares that went with the farm from his parents or her parents, as the case may be. And these shares were a vehicle to keep that person milking the cows, that they had to continue and say in the future destiny of their business. And this is a fundamental attack on their core right to have a say in how the business is run on their behalf.
And in terms of the co-op itself, like it can't increase its wealth through a system like this. All it's doing is redistributing the shareholding within the co-op. As the shares are created, other shares are diluted. So the co-op itself doesn't create any net gain among its shareholder base.
No, it doesn't. It's just a vehicle to give the person that wasn't lucky enough to inherit shares, that could have shares in their name, to help them have a say in how the business is run on their behalf. And there was nothing accruing to anybody unless that the shares were sold and you paid capital gains on them.
In terms of IFA's advice to individual farmers who've received these letters, they've been asked by Revenue to respond within 21 days. What should farmers do right now?
Well, I think no more than IFA, farmers are still grappling to come to terms with the lack of legal clarity as to where this surprise has come from. There will be statements coming out in the next few days, I imagine, when people have got their heads around this and the complexities of it. So at the moment, I think people should just sit tight until they hear otherwise and keep themselves informed as best they can by seeking advice from people that they know involved in IFA, and they should also seek sound advice from a reputable tax planner that knows what he's talking about. An accountant doing profit and loss and making a tax return mightn't be up to speed with the complexities of this, so it's best to seek sound tax advice.
Thanks very much, Brendan. So I'm joined here by David Diggin, another branch member in Ballybunion. David, what do you make of these letters that Revenue have been sending out to Kerry shareholders?
They're worrying, but what can we do? We're only farmers.
But at the time that you would have been receiving preference shares, there would have been no suggestion that they were going to be valued at €95 for tax purposes.
No, there was no word of that.
Yeah.
Just complete shock to us when we got the letters came out yesterday.
And what would you have paid for your shares?
125.
125.
Yeah.
And they're sitting in the drawer still, are they?
Sitting in the drawer still, thanks be to God.
Yeah. So that's nice to have them, but at the same time, yeah. And the idea is that, as I understand it, the co-op is trying to encourage active milk producers like yourself to have a say in their co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if Revenue get away with this, that's probably going to undermine that co-op structure, isn't it?
It's going to undermine it. I think the milk suppliers are even getting shares as it stands. Like.
Yes.
So now we're doing it in numbers every year.
And the shares tend to go away. I mean, for a generation it worked great, but the shares now tend to go away from the herd, don't they?
They're gone away from when the generation swapped. One son got the land, and the rest of the siblings got the shares. But I suppose it's fair enough too, like.
But that creates a problem within the co-op.
Yeah, because you more dry shareholders now than have liquid shareholders, we could say.
And that's what this was designed to
do, like,
address.
To address it, to design to give the milk suppliers an interest under control in the co-op itself, like.
And is it a worry that with Stan McCarthy having stepped down and now with your chairman having lost his seat in his region last week, you've no chairman, you've no chief executive, it's almost shades of IFA a year ago that there's a crisis and no one at the wheel?
I reckon we started out in the next month or so, because we new chairman elected now, the next board meeting. And surely there has another chief executive side of it as well. So, and much more one, I suppose, John Cannon has been to retire too in the near future. John has been with the crew too. John has been, I suppose, at the head of with 15 or 20 years as well. So he'll be lost as well, but I suppose things change, things move on.
Yes, but leadership is needed now, and Kerry have been silent on all this. I mean, we've heard IFA, we've heard IFAC, we've heard the farmers, but where are Kerry?
Kerry are meant to be looking into this. Yeah. That's what we're hearing back from our board members. They're meant to be representing us, and the thing where their attendance is hanging tough, and they'll know more next week of what.
I'm here with Sean Brosnan, the Kerry chair. Sean, huge reaction all over the county, I'd imagine, to this issue.
Oh, massive issue in the county. My phone has been busy from early Monday morning and all day probably today. It's, different people ringing, a lot of accountants ringing. Most people are very confused by what has happened. They don't know where this has come from, and they're looking for clarity, and so are we at this stage. And between yourselves and IPAC and Kerry are obviously involved with Brian Durden of the secretary. So it's confusing, and it's certainly frightening, because the 400 people have got this letter, but everybody knows about it, and everybody is wondering where this is going to end, and where they're going to get this money if they have to pay it.
Do you get the sense the revenue are trying to panic people into making a knee-jerk response, paying some money, and they have their foot in the door then? And what's IFA's advice to people who've got these letters? Should they hold tight for the minute?
Oh, definitely hold tight until we get clarity on this and we see what it is. We don't want somebody paying this, as you say, as a knee-jerk reaction because that would set a precedent that they would use, and it could catch everybody else in the net that they're casting at the moment. So that's the advice: is to sit tight. Don't do anything a while until we get good advice about it and see what can be done. What we shouldn't do, possibly, rather than do at this stage yet.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
On Tuesday, my colleague Amy Fitzgibbon attended the launch of Teagasc's annual report for 2015. According to the report, increases in income from the Knowledge Transfer Programme and additional research income brought Teagasc's total income in 2015 to 175 million. This is an increase of 10 million on 2014. Amy sat down with Professor Jerry Boyle, Director of Teagasc, and she began by asking him about the headline figure for 2015.
Yeah, well, 2015 was a pretty busy year, as always. I guess I remember the highlight for me was the huge increase in applications for our Green Cert courses. We had 3,500 in 2015. Normally, a normal year we'd have 500, so yeah. It was a massive increase. And
that was a lot to do with the Young Farmer Scheme in National
Entirely,
Reserve.
yeah. There was a huge interest, and an overhang of that is we now have 3,500 people on a waiting list, because we managed to deal in that year with 3,500, another 1,000 this year. So we've dealt with 4,500, but we still have another 3,500 to deal with.
So you dealt with 4,500 over last year.
Yeah, the 2 years, yeah. So that the big challenge.
Huge amount.
The big challenge is how we're going to shift that backlog that's now there.
Yeah. And are these students waiting? Are these students who want to enter the Young Farmer Scheme?
I'd say it's a combination of people who want to enter that. I suppose they still have a few years that they can avail of it, obviously. Yeah. And the other people who probably they'd be intending for the farm to be transferred, or expecting it to be transferred down the road a little bit, and decided with all the interest in the Green Cert to bring forward their application. So we're hoping they might maybe persuade them to wait a little bit longer, if that's what their interest is.
I mean, I know it's a huge increase in demand. How is the teaching staff coping with this? Have you recruited extra teaching staff?
Yeah, well, for last year and this year, we were able to recruit an extra 70 staff. These are largely self-financing, but there's always an issue with public sector recruitment, is that you have what I call creeping permanency. So even though there were contract staff, we have to have very strict regulations in regard to the contracts that are issued for people. So it's very unlikely we're going to be able to renew those contracts or even recruit replacements. So we're going to have to find some other ways to cope with the additional demand.
And those contracts are finishing at the end of this
year?
Well,
some of them, the first tranche, because we staggered the recruitment, the first tranche of about, I think there's 20 people are finishing this December, and we certainly won't be replacing those immediately anyway.
You said there during the conference that you plan to recruit an extra 75 staff. Is that over this year? Or is that over
75 is this year. That was the first year of the delegated sanction, so it's huge boost, because that's equivalent to about 2 years normal retirements.
Right.
So we haven't caught up with the staff we've lost since 2008-9, but at the same time it's been a massive boost, because we were very short in some key areas, and we've managed to replenish some of those deficits. Looking forward to next year, we anticipate about 31 retirements, so we'll be replacing all of those.
Okay.
We also had some opportunity to catch up with promotions, because particularly in order to retain staff, you need to be able to reward them for their productivity and so on. So the only way we can do that is through promotions. So we've had some limited promotions this year, and we'll have some next year.
Okay, excellent. And you mentioned that there are 51 Teagasc has 51 advisory colleges, and that's down from 90.
Yeah, 51 offices, advisory offices.
Okay, advisory offices, sorry. So do you anticipate that number going back up again?
No, and I certainly don't anticipate it being reduced in the near term. No, I think the whole nature of delivering advice has changed dramatically with greater and more efficient use of ICT. But it was a massive wrench for, not alone for the organisation, but for farmers to reduce our offices from 90 down to 51. So it's not something I'd want to be revisiting so soon. But we have to keep an eye on efficient delivery of advice. And as I said, more and more is being delivered and can be delivered through, say, mobile devices and so forth. And I think you're going to see more and more what I call data-driven advice, where the advisor will be responding to information provided by the farmer through the cloud or whatever. And I think you're going to see a lot of that in the years ahead. Yeah.
So there'll be less need for kind of concrete places as such. It'll be more happening on the digital sphere.
I think so. Yeah. I think there'll be more of that. What I call data-driven advice. Yeah.
Okay. But you were saying your profits for this year, you came out neutral, which is good, which is
well,
the
just to explain on the Teagasc finances, because we're a public body, we can't generate a profit.
You can't.
So it's someone described it like trying to land an aeroplane on a sixpence. That we have to balance.
Yeah.
That's the nature of public accounting. In terms
you have
of
to spend what you get in. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
And just to talk briefly about farm incomes, I know it wasn't the focus of today's report, but I think it was Noel Cawley mentioned earlier that farm incomes were quite good. That beef was responsible for them not dropping too much, but obviously dairy farmers had a bad year. Can you say a bit more?
Yeah, well, obviously the price situation in dairy was this year and indeed last year was poor. Hopefully we're coming out of that situation now. We're having a review and outlook next Tuesday, so it'll be possible to at that stage to go into detail. But yeah, we anticipate obviously some recovery in dairy, but it's all predicated on price. Beef, everything is relative. I mean, it's the very low net margin in beef production, particularly in suckling. But relative to dairy and to the previous year, it has been reasonably good.
Yeah. And for next year, do you anticipate beef staying the same?
Okay, you have to wait till next Tuesday to find out our views on that.
Okay. Well, Dr. Jerry Boyle, thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
The latest figures on tractor sales across Ireland show that western counties are driving up the numbers. News correspondent Thomas Hubert got an update from the Irish Farmers Journal's machinery editor James Maloney.
The picture overall looks quite good. We're on a par with last year. We're actually 4 units up for the same year-to-date period. And if the trends go like the average monthly sales, we'll end up ahead of last year on tractor sales overall.
And where are those tractors going?
The west of Ireland seems to have awoken really in terms of tractor sales. If we look predominantly along the west coast, nearly all the counties are up. There's major increases in Galway. They're up 30% of 122 tractors sold there this year. Mayo has seen a 24% rise with 88 tractors sold. Other counties doing well then is Clare, they're at 97 tractors, and Kerry is up as well by 16% to 54 tractors. Now, it's worth noting that these figures are just from January to October at the minute versus the last period from 2015 January to October as well. But overall, it looks like that the 100 to 120 horsepower tractor is really the backbone of the industry here. Over 40% of the sales are going to that market, which typifies to me that has the mixed farmer that's buying it. You're looking at pretty small tillage operations, dry stock herds, dairy farmers, that type of a farm are looking for the new tractor, looking for reliability, maybe even part-time farming, where they can't afford downtime and they're encouraged to change the tractor. So reading into that then, if we look at where the sales are back, well, the tillage sales are back a little bit, and I suppose that's not surprising considering we're nearly on the back of 4 years of low commodity prices in tillage. But saying that, they haven't fallen off a cliff either. Like Wexford would be predominantly a big tillage county, and the sales are just back 1% there. There's 111 tractors sold. Dublin is down 10%, Meath is down 4%, and Louth is down 10%. And that would also correspond to the reduction in the higher horsepower tractors that sold. I think we're just looking quickly at the figures there. There's about 35 units less over the 150 horsepower class of tractors sold this year. And predominantly they would all go, they wouldn't be in the west of Ireland, they'd be on the east coast on the larger tillage farms. So, but in general, the outlook isn't too bad. I'd say a lot of the machinery trade would be very happy with them figures at the start of the year. We're after having a few factors like Brexit, which has seen the importation of second-hand tractors increase as well. So you're probably looking at around 1,500 to 1,600 tractors imported as well, because of the favourable currency and the sterling exchange rates. The one issue that came up actually from guys that are in this trade is that the tractors in the UK are moving fast, and that getting good quality second hands now is becoming a problem for them, because the British farmer is inclined to sit tight for a minute until he sees what's happening with Brexit.
Oh yeah, playing with the exchange rate and hoping to get a bit more out of that old tractor or second-hand tractor sitting in the yard, yes. James, who is selling those tractors at the moment? We know it's a very competitive market. How are the brands doing?
Oh, generally the top three doesn't change a whole lot, Thomas. We have data here now from 2014, and we're not allowed to release the data from 2015 or 2016. But in 2014, John Deere came out top of the pile. It's kind of like the Premier League. You have the top three there: John Deere, New Holland, and Massey Ferguson. And then you have a little gap down to the other players, which are making, to be honest, from looking at the figures, and I can't say too much about it, but they're gaining ground, and they're coming. The top three are coming under increased pressure because the other brands are gaining on them as well. So really down to, I suppose, finance has a big player on it, where the cost of making the machine more affordable over a period of time. And all the manufacturers, if you're up the top, you're naturally there to be targeted the whole time. So it's quite competitive. The last time there was only three units separating first and second, and then there was a little bit of a gap to the third manufacturer, Massey Ferguson. But Massey are making huge grounds towards the top position as well.
Okay, James, thank you very much. You have the map of tractor sales in Ireland in this week's Irish Farmers Journal and at farmersjournal.ie, and a lot more figures as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Thomas.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
The fight against bovine TB has been ongoing since the 1950s. The last decade has seen a marked decline in the number of reactors, which can be attributed in large part to the Department of Agriculture's badger culling programme. The department has just finished up a trial in County Kilkenny which examines the viability of replacing culling with an oral vaccination on badgers. My colleague Amy Fitzgibbon sat down with Margaret Good, who is the veterinary head of TB eradication with the department, to find out when the report from this trial will be published.
The badger vaccination trial has finished, and we are the data has been analysed. There are 2 papers that have been written and are being finalised, and we're waiting for the results. So I would hope they should be out before Christmas.
And that'll be published.
It could be in the next week. Okay. I don't know when they'll be exactly finished. And yes, they're submitted for publication then, and they will appear in a scientific journal, peer reviewed.
Okay.
So that report is due to be presented to the Minister quite soon.
Basically, so it's the oral vaccine project,
yes.
or that's being, and then the one now that's ending at the end of
2017 is what we call a non-inferiority trial.
Okay.
That vaccinating the badgers in areas where we have culled is no worse than continuing culling. The impact on the cattle herds is no worse. So that's the non-inferiority bit.
Okay.
It's not worse.
And then what will happen after then?
We will continue looking at that. In the meantime, as I said earlier, we have been looking at how we might be able to deliver an oral vaccine to badgers. Because if vaccination is going to work, you really have to get good coverage of your population so that you get population immunity. Our work in reducing the levels of TB in badgers, which was a consequence of the work we have been doing in culling in hotspots. We have been keeping a monitor on the level of TB in the badgers, and we have less than half of the level of TB that we used to have in the badgers that we were culling. And that will make it easier to get population coverage vaccination, because no vaccine has any effect really on an animal that's already infected.
Okay, so just reducing the density will help.
But reducing the level of TB in the badgers that are out there means that proportionately we have more non-infected badgers out there than we used to have. So we can get vaccination into them, get them protected.
And hopefully that'll have a knock-on effect on the
cattle.
Yes,
exactly.
Not being infected with TB. So if the results then are positive of this report that's coming out before Christmas, when will you be able to roll out this?
We have trials going on at the moment trying to find a bait delivery system for oral vaccination. So we've been doing that now for a while, and that will finish next year. And we'll analyse the samples to see whether...
And if those results are promising, then will you roll it out nationwide?
That'll be one step. The second step will be that we have to get the actual vaccine licensed.
This is the
and
human...
that is, we're using human BCG, but human BCG is normally injected.
Yeah.
So we have to get an oral version of it, and the oral version will have to be prepared in such a way that it can get through the stomach and get through the acid in the stomach without being killed.
Okay.
So that it's delivered into the intestine effectively.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that might take a while?
That might take a while because there are an awful lot of rules about licensing vaccines that are going to be put out into an environmental setting.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you about some of the figures that have come up in relation to TB over the last year. Figures that we analysed this year, we found that there's been an increase of 6% in terms of reactors per 1,000 tests by the end of quarter 3 last year and the end of quarter 3 this year. Are you worried by that trend?
No, I'm not worried. We have two factors that are feeding into that. One, we have more cattle. We have more cattle in the country this year than we had any time in the last 10 years. We've had additional tests, so that has given some additional reactors. The second thing is that we are doing more blood testing than we were. Now, the plan with doing the blood testing is we're concentrating on herds where there is active TB, where there is a problem, but if we can get the infected animals out quicker and earlier.
Yeah. And I mean, speaking of the test, is there anything you can do to improve the sensitivity of the skin test? You said it was something like 85% for the skin test.
we do, when we are in a known infected herd, we do a more severe interpretation, so we take out inconclusive reactors as well. We also go into those herds and into the cohort group where the infected animals were detected and go in with blood tests. And using the blood test together with the skin test, we can bring that sensitivity up to at least 93%. So that's a significant improvement. This year we did a lot more blood tests than we had previously done. There's a number of reasons for that. We do the test within 8 hours of the sample being collected. We want to have it in the laboratory. So you can imagine if you're down in the extreme outer edges of Ireland, it can be quite hard to get the samples into the laboratory.
Because you said you got 3 labs.
Now we have
Cork,
3.
Dublin,
Yeah,
and
Cork
Sligo.
came on this year.
Okay.
So there's
for that
a lot of, yes, exactly. There's a lot of, when you take in Cork and Kerry, there's a lot of cattle in Cork and Kerry.
Yeah.
So we've had a big increase in the amount of blood samples that we've been able to get to the laboratory in time. So there are herds now that are being blood tested that wouldn't previously have been blood tested.
Okay. And just finally on the deer situation in Wicklow, the department said that in conjunction with the NPWS they formed a steering committee now to reduce the level of density in deer. And also they said they're looking into studying the levels of TB in deer in other areas in Wicklow besides Callery. Do you know when those 2 projects will sort of kick off, I suppose? Yeah.
I understand that the additional removal of deer in Callery is probably already starting. They're giving extra licences. That National Parks and Wildlife will be giving extra licences to remove additional deer in those areas and using the normal hunters to do that. Around the rest of Wicklow, just checking, essentially that will be a check to see are there any other hotspots in the county. I don't think that project will get off the ground until probably early next year, because I know the National Parks and Wildlife have concentrated on trying to get Callery started, and then we'll try work on the rest in conjunction with ourselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Margaret.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
On Friday of last week, a new Centre of Excellence was unveiled for duck processor Silver Hill Foods in Emmyvale, County Monaghan. Our Northern Ireland correspondent, Peter McCann, spoke to Peter McConnell from Silver Hill to find out what the new centre hopes to achieve.
We produce Peking duck for mainly the Chinese market. The centre we're opening here today is really it's a customer-based centre. We do a lot of research and development on producing new products for the customers in the Chinese community, and also retail. And also we do research and development from live bird side. We're always looking for better feed conversion and more efficient ways of producing the duck to the plate.
Your business model, is it similar to like my park in the north? Is it an integrated system and where your growers based?
Completely integrated. We hatch, match and dispatch all our own birds. The only thing we don't do is manufacture our own feed, but otherwise than that we're completely integrated.
And how many growers do you have, and what's
up until 2011 we had one standing outside grower as last 20 years, and from that time to now we've taken on a further 20, so we've taken on 20 growers now in the last 4 years.
The processing site here, how many ducks are you processing each week?
The growth of the last 5 years, we're doing about 36,000 ducks a week on a 3-day week, and now we're doing 85,000 on the 5-day week.
And the markets for that, Peter, whereabouts are you?
The market is traditionally the UK. It's a very strong market, very, very important market to us. But our growth now over the past couple of years has been Asia-based, mainly Singapore, and that's where we see the growth in the future. We're looking to Indonesia and Hong Kong.
As far as Brexit is going to be an issue for you, is it? And have you growers north and south? Is that
we have growers north and south? Yes, Brexit. Well, I think it's uncertain times. Nobody really knows what way it's going to go, but we're fairly confident we'll handle any challenges that comes to us.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Finally, the Agri-jobs supplement for 2016 comes out in this week's Irish Country Living. The supplement is packed with tips on how to go about getting a job and gives an outline of companies looking to fill vacancies next year. Education and Careers Editor Mary Phelan gave Amy Fitzgibbon a sneak preview.
So this is an annual supplement that we publish every year. It contains a fairly extensive survey where we contact individual agri-employers all over the country to find out how many jobs they created in 2016, how many of those roles were newly created and how many were replacement positions, what those positions filled were, and then what their recruitment plans are for 2017. So we got data from 73 companies, and between those 73 companies, they filled 2,622 roles this year. They filled 148 seasonal roles and 21 internships. So that's combined of 2,791 roles filled across these companies this year. For 2017, 55 of those companies between them said that they were going to fill 1,090 roles next year, 150 seasonal roles and 20 internships. So companies are usually much more cautious predicting what employment will be for next year, A, because they don't know, B, because they're cautious because obviously they can't predict the future or how business is going to go, and C, which is kind of unique to this year, Brexit is causing quite a lot of uncertainty, and we really found that when we were speaking to employers.
Is this the first year now the supplement has come out?
No, I think it's the fourth year. Okay. I think it's the fourth, if I'm counting right. So it's an annual survey that we've been doing. I've been writing the careers and education section for a number of years now, and I really saw the potential there in terms of the jobs available, and I really wanted to kind of get that message out there. And particularly during the recession, I had employers on the phone telling me, particularly in meat processors, that they couldn't find the right people for the jobs. So you had the national headline saying there was no jobs, but in the agri sphere I knew that there was. So really we're just trying to bring publicity and show the opportunities that are in the agri sector and what an important role it plays in rural Ireland, because a lot of these companies I spoke to are really in very rural parts of the country.
So what are the big stories then of 2016, Mary? Who are the big agri recruiters that stood out for you?
So really Kerry Group, which I don't think will come as a surprise to anybody because they employ 24,000 people globally, but this year they filled 800 positions in Ireland alone, which really is quite a huge number for one company. The Department of Agriculture, again, I don't think this will come as a surprise to anybody, but they were by far the most popular employer of 2016. I can say that anecdotally from the amount of people that got in contact with me this year. They just wanted as much information as they could get their hands on. They wanted a heads up as to when the department was going to start the recruitment for different job grades. IFAC filled 42 positions this year. That's quite a lot.
Can you give us a sense of what these positions were, how they break down? I know 800, say for Kerry Group, is a lot, but are there any indication of what are they all kind of levels and all pay grades, all that kind of?
So Kerry Group said when asked that the positions they filled were in the areas of HR, ICT, manufacturing, marketing, R&D, sales, regulatory, commercial finance, financial control, really quite across the group. It was a mix of replacement hires and newly created roles, and Frank Hayes, the Director of Corporate Affairs, made the point of saying to me that there were a number of retirements in Kerry Group this year. And another reason for why a number of these roles came up in Kerry was because there was a significant redeployment of people. So you have a lot of people moving from Irish offices to positions globally, whether it's South Africa or it's America, and that seems to have been the case last year when I was speaking to Kerry as well. So Frank kind of describes it as the Kerry mobility story. So you have people established in the company,
and it kind of created a vacuum then for people to connect to in Ireland.
In Ireland,
yeah. Now, there's also lots of hints and tips and advice about how to go about getting a job in the supplement. Is that right?
Yes, there is. So, for example, we spoke to Sinead English about answering tricky job interview questions. You know, there's that famous question, what's your biggest flaw? And she says, don't answer it by saying you're a perfectionist, you know, come up with something that's actually a genuine flaw. And, you know, a question like, what will you do if you don't get this job? That's an employer trying to check out if you have a plan B, if this doesn't work out for you, because they want somebody who's organised. So that's just one example. There's more articles, you know, stuck in a career rut. We spoke to Fionnuala Power from Clearview Coaching Group, and, you know, she has advice for what to do if you feel that you're stuck in a career rut. And a lot of people feel that way but can't afford maybe to take another job where they would be getting paid less because they have family and mortgage commitments. So she has advice for people in that kind of situation. And then there's a lot of kind of employee profiles of people who are established in the industry, or maybe, you know, 2 or 3 years into the industry, and, you know, it's quite useful. You might want to channel their career if you want to follow in their footsteps. They kind of give details of how they got to where they are.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. And what would you say finally is the most valuable thing about the supplement?
So
sounds like there's lots of valuable things.
Thanks, Amy. So I would say the most valuable thing about this supplement is for people listening to the podcast who are looking for a job in the agri sector at the moment, or know that they will be looking quite soon. Yeah. As I mentioned earlier, we asked the employers what their recruitment plans were for 2017, and as I said, not all employers are in a position to comment, but a number of them were, and they have told us what they will be recruiting for in 2017, what roles they expect to be filling. So it means that if you find a particular company that you would love to work for who are saying this in the supplement, you can get in ahead of the game, give them a call, tell them that you're interested, you know, make contact before that vacancy goes up and everybody else knows about it. And I mean, that shows initiative as well and passion for working for that company. And then otherwise, there's actually quite a lot of advertisements for vacancies in the industry in the supplement. So, you know, that's in the career section of Irish Country Living every week as well, but this is a specifically dedicated 13-page supplement to Agri-jobs, so there is of course quite a number of real live roles advertised in the supplement too. So really, if you want to work in the agri sector, if you already have a job and you want to switch roles, you need to get your hands on the Farmers Journal this week.
Okay, well, it sounds like a really valuable supplement, and obviously this is a good precedent to the Agri Careers Fair next year.
Yes, so the Agri Careers Fair, we had the first Agri Careers Fair in March of this year. It went very well, so we're going to be running it again. We're very excited. It's going to be bigger and better than last year, and we will be announcing details of exactly what date in March it is happening very shortly.
Okay, so watch this space.
Watch this space.
Thanks
Amy.
very much, Mary.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.